Hey everybody, this is your host Daryl M Brooks. I'm waiting for Brother Rick Ector to come on. He is coming out of Detroit, Michigan. He's been a keynote speaker all over the country, and he's a gun rights activist out of Detroit, Michigan. Hey Rick, are you there? You willing to come on and talk? Let's get these technical difficulties out of the way. And there's always something when it comes to Facebook and the technical problems that we have here. And either it's the low internet or it's just these problems. But I'm having Brother Rick Ector. Hey Harry, how you doing? Welcome to the On Fire Show. Hey Betty, and hey, we're waiting for Brother Rick Ector to come on, and we're going to have an exciting show. You're going to talk about gun rights, and he is an exciting brother. He is out of Detroit, Michigan. He is a gun rights activist. He has his own academy, and he's won numerous awards around the country. Hey Brother Floyd, how you doing? We're waiting for Rick Ector to come on. I sent him, hey brother, I sent him the invite. Hey Rick, are you there? I don't know if it was my end or his end, but we should have all these technical difficulties solved right now. Hey Mike, how you doing? Waiting for brother, hey Ray, how you doing, Reed? And Rosie Reed, how you doing? We're waiting for Brother Rick Ector to come on. He is a gun rights activist out of Detroit, Michigan. Hey, brother, are you there? Yes, we're ready to bring him on. Brother Rick, are you there?
Man,
Hey,
finally. Can you see me now?
finally.
Man,
How you doing?
what? I finally got it together, man. Better late than never, man. Hey, well,
So
as long as you can see me and hear me, I guess everything's working.
we're great. So tell me, Brother Rick, I saw your great gun rights activist, and I see all the awards. You were 2014 Gun Advocate of the Year, Michigan Coalition Responsible Gun Owners. Your 2014 Second Amendment March Keynote Speaker. Your 2014 award, Davis Award of Excellence, International Fuller Women's Expo. 2013 Outstanding Workshop Presentation Awards. I am Woman Expo, and so you have your own academy, and tell us all about you and how you got started.
Oh man, that's a really maybe 13 years ago, man. I had the unfortunate situation where I was robbed at gunpoint in my own driveway, and it was, I guess you could say I had an epiphany. I decided that I would take on a more active role in my personal protection. I looked into exploring this concealed pistol license business I had heard about, and I made some phone calls, did my due diligence. I found an instructor, and I completed the training. I got my license, and I studied the law, and I continue to try to better my skills in terms of being able to defend myself. And it got to a point, man, where the return that I was getting for all the information that I was digesting didn't really help me much going forward. So I had this crazy idea. I said, well, why don't I look into becoming a firearms instructor? I was initially looking at it from a personal improvement standpoint. Maybe if I learned what the instructors knew, that would help me out as a personal gun carrier. And I haven't looked back, man. I kept picking up certifications and started teaching in earnest, and started getting involved in the gun rights field, and started becoming more of an advocate, and haven't looked back, man. It's been an interesting journey.
So you've one of the things that I like to talk about is there are always people say, well, people in the community shouldn't have guns, protect themselves, wait on the police, and especially African Americans, we don't need guns, and guns kill people, and people,
Right.
and so one of the things that I've always talked about is, You know, especially in certain areas in the community, people should have the right to protect themselves, you know, and a God-given right. And I'm sure you heard from the liberals telling you, you know, why are you talking to people, helping people get guns in your community for to protect themselves?
Yeah, you hear a lot of interesting things from a lot of different people, but
Hmm.
one thing that really isn't known by, I say, the average person is that law enforcement, you know, they have a definite job to do to uphold the law and to arrive. But you know, they'll get there when they get there based on the resources that they have. But the biggest thing that has been affirmed by several courts, man, is that no individual person is guaranteed to be protected by any local unit of government. That is, that the police, you know, they have the general duty to preserve order, but they're not responsible for your safety. There's only one person who's responsible for your safety, and that's the person that you see when you look into your closest mirror. So
Hmm.
you have the burden and the duty of protecting yourself. And if you
Hmm.
choose to do that, then there are some things that you should do on a practical level. You need to
Hmm.
somehow get proper instruction from somewhere. You need to make sure that you know the laws, you make sure that you're safe, and that you do everything that's required of you. And I ask that people be, you know, good ambassadors, man. Not only are you protecting yourself, but you're putting forth a good image of what a law-abiding gun owner looks like, so that we don't have any negative images that cause people to start listening to the anti-gun folks and some of the
Hmm.
curious or interesting laws that they're trying to push and have changed to our detriment.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that here in New Jersey, I know Tony Simon is doing is working with especially African Americans and who have a right to carry or have a right to have a gun. What has it been like for you when you tell, you know, I was at this event, I think it was a Kwanzaa event, and I spoke to a lady and I asked her, she's African American, I said, you know, you have a right to have a gun in your house, and she didn't believe that. You know, she was always told that, you know, she didn't
Huh.
have a right to have a gun. And I said, you know, as long as you're not a, you know, felon, violent felon, you know, you could have a gun to protect yourself. And so, how's it been like, especially in the African American community? Because people that realize that I can have a gun, you know, to protect myself, especially women.
You know, we've had shall issue licensing for concealed carry permits since about 2001. So it's not been a long period of time, but
Hmm.
been on the books for a minute, since at least 2001. And even then, you know, the processing that it was taking the government to really get those applications processed and get the license issued, you know, has been a challenge. But now you fast forward to 2019, we're at now, and they're getting them out fairly quickly. They're processing them in earnest.
Hmm.
Most people know that they requirements. You know, the requirements aren't too stringent, but they are more difficult for us to get them than it is for a person to become a law enforcement officer. You know, the
So,
biggest
so,
hurdle,
hmm Go ahead.
the biggest hurdle is passing the background check. And, you know, for the average law abiding citizen, you know, that's not too much of an issue. You know, there are a litany of issues that they fall under, you know, a list of disqualifications that you might fall under, you know, either under the 3-year rule or the 8-year rule. But by and large, passing the background check is the biggest issue. And like I said, it's shall issue. So if you meet the requirements, they have to give it to you. Of course, you got to be 21 years of age. And currently here in the state of Michigan, you have to take a qualified basic pistol safety training class to make sure
Hmm.
that you receive some fundamental training and you actually know what the laws are, so you don't go out and do something ill-advised and become an issue safety-wise for the community.
Question: do a lot of especially in inner city African Americans do they get excited about and realize that they can own a gun and protect themselves?
You say exciting. For
I
many
mean,
people, it
do
is.
they realize that they can? I'm just saying, do they realize that people, when I talk to people, they're like, wow, I can have a gun in my house, and
Well,
you see that look on their face, like, wow, I didn't realize that. My friend said I can have one, but I didn't realize I can have one.
and that's one of the things that, and I wanted to touch base with you because, I know
Mm-hmm.
you're based out of New Jersey, and I'm not exactly certain what the requirements are in New Jersey, but from what I've heard is that they're even more strict in New Jersey than
Oh
they
yeah.
are here in Michigan. Here in
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, of course, we can have long guns without any type of licensing or schemes of any sort, just be, 18 years of age, but with regards to a
Wow.
handgun, you know, you can own a handgun at 18, but you can't buy a handgun from a licensed dealer unless you're 21. So until you become 21, but still 18, you'd have to buy one used from someone, in a personal private transaction, which is one of the targets that the anti-gun people are going after on the national
Mm-hmm.
level now. If you listen to some of the people and some of the comments that they've made after the U.S. House, this new U.S. House that just got seated a couple of days ago, some of the things that, that they're putting, on the table that they're trying to get passed with regards to anti-gun legislation. But, here, it's been on the books, concealed carry, on a shall issue basis has been here for a while, since 2001. There are still some people that may not know, but for the most part, most people do know that
Most people do know.
that license does exist. But it's just a
Mm-hmm.
question of making sure that they know what. Generally speaking, if you don't have any serious issues, you should be able to get it without too much problems. And if there are some
Now, what's the
issues,
serious issues? What's the serious issue that
well,
allow you will not have a gun?
well, the biggest one, of course, is a felony of any type. A felony of any
Mm-hmm.
type would preclude you from getting a concealed pistol license.
Okay.
Domestic violence, is another one, either as a felony or as a misdemeanor. That's a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else would have you subjected to, under an 8-year or a 3-year exclusionary period. Of course, there's some statutory requirements that you have to be like 21 years of age to get the license. So that's something chronologically you would just have to wait on until you became of that age. But by and large, if it's a major prohibition, like for example, if you were dishonorably discharged from the military, then that would preclude you from gun ownership. But the biggest issues is, the felony and a misdemeanor domestic violence, unless you have something really interesting going on in your criminal history or your background, you should qualify, or you might be subjected to a 3-year or 8-year waiting period. You came in a little garbled right there. What did you say?
it's how is the states that
Well,
you do
man,
have, the state center that you have towards gun owners?
how's our governor
Okay.
with regards to guns? Well, I mean, we just had an
Yes.
election, man. So we just got a brand new governor who's probably been on the job probably 3 or 4 days. So, from a technical standpoint, the jury is still out. But from everything that I've heard about our new governor, she's anti-gun, and there's probably going to be some push by the anti-gunners that's on some level to try to get some more gun control. The one saving grace that we do
Mm-hmm.
have here in Michigan is that, the governor can't do anything without the legislature. And fortunately for gun owners, the political party that's against gun control controls both the House and the state Senate. So hopefully that'll be an effective check on the governor. And hopefully, the citizens will do their homework and do their due diligence. And in 2 years, when we have another election, we'll be careful about who we vote for to represent us at the state capitol in Lansing, who would engage in any legal changes that would attack our right to keep, bear, and own a firearm.
Oh, okay. So do you go, one of the questions I also wanted to ask you, so you're talented. Do you go all over the country, and what states have you been speaking in?
I've been fortunate. I've had some invitations to go different places. I always try to make sure that I go to the NRA annual meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Another conference that I go to, is not only the NRA, man. That's there's other conferences that are out there, man, and I go to them when I can. And
Mm-hmm.
every so often I'm afforded an opportunity to speak. There's a speaking opportunity that's presented itself from the gun rights organization, in Florida, man, and they're talking about bringing me and a couple of other gun rights advocates from around the country to come on out and to speak. And whenever there's an opportunity, man, to network with other people, whether they're in our state or whether they're in another state such as Florida, it's a
Mm-hmm.
great opportunity because
Do,
I really enjoyed going to the national conferences and networking with fellow gun rights advocates, and it's an honor for them to extend out an invitation for me to come see them on their home turf. So I'm looking
yeah, do
forward to
you
going to Florida next month.
mm-hmm. Do you do any advising other gun right activists around the country?
We have conversations, and my door is always open. I look
Mm-hmm.
at it from when I first became a gun rights advocate years ago, man. I knew about firearms instruction and I knew about training, but I wanted to get more involved. And I looked to people who were already doing what I wanted to do. And a guy I reached out to, man, you may have heard of him. His name is Ken Blanchard. He's out of Maryland. He goes
Oh,
by Black Man with a Gun. And I actually ran into him. At a gun rights conference. As a matter of fact, I'm understating it. He had his podcast years ago. He still has that podcast, but I was listening to his podcast and he was talking about this conference, gun rights policy conference that was happening in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati, man. And just on the strength of checking out his podcast, he extended an opportunity for people to come on down. He billed it as a gathering of like-minded gun rights advocates who were unpretentious and who were very interested. interested in gun rights, and that's something that was a message that I wanted to share. And I actually met Ken and got to talking with Ken, and he's been a close friend ever since then. But you know, the people that you meet at the conferences, the networking opportunities. I actually brought Ken to Detroit for a gun rights event and a gun rights dinner I had years ago. But just the networking possibilities that exist between yourself and other gun rights advocates from across the country are endless. You know, just like these guys out of Florida, man, with their Florida Carry organization, you know, going to bring some gun rights advocates, you know, from across the country to come on down there next month, man. So it's a great opportunity. It's a great networking, and it's great to share what you know and hopefully to inspire and learn from your fellow gun rights advocates. You know, the biggest thing that's really attacking a lot of people across the country are these so-called red flag laws. And I know I'm interested in talking with them in Florida. They just passed a version of red flag laws in Florida and in a couple of other states. We haven't heard any official, you know, declarations of having that here, but there's been a couple of red flag laws. Oh, it's probably the most onerous, insidious, evil legislation that ever exists. You know, we'll just Well, it's a scheme by which the government is looking for a way to take away your gun rights. And what makes this law so evil is that they can do it, you know, under the guise of this new law, that there's some characteristic about you personally that does not run afoul of the law. You know, so from the surface, you've broken no law, but there's something about you that someone doesn't like, or for some reason they perceive that you may be a threat. And so what they could do is they could actually petition your state government, your local state government. Yeah, personality defect. That's one way of looking at it. They could say, well, look, this person hasn't broken any laws and this person hasn't done anything to be subject to a personal protection order to take away their gun. But you know what? Here's some things that drive me to be very suspicious about his character, and I don't think that he should have a gun. So let's have a hearing. And in some cases, this hearing can be done without you even being there. So there's the potential for them to have a hearing with the government, a government body, your local government agency, to have a hearing about your fitness to own and possess and carry a gun, done in complete secrecy. And then they can have a ruling with no due process. And then once they get that ruling, they get that personal protection order, that red flag order, they could literally have law enforcement show up at your house at 3 o'clock on a raid your home and take all of your guns with no due process. And so you've committed no crime, you've been disarmed, you've been deprived of due process. And then if you elect to do so, you can then hire an attorney and request a hearing down the road to then have the opportunity to prove yourself not guilty of a crime that you have not been convicted of to get your guns back. It's the most ridiculous, evil, heinous gun confiscation scheme I've ever heard of. You know, it's very easy. There's so many gun laws on the books. There's some estimates that there's 20,000 gun laws on the books as it is. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? You know, they estimate that there's over 20,000 gun laws on the books. And then, of course,
Can you hear me?
you said one of the things
Hey,
that
are
you
you?
tell people is what?
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I
can you
hear
hear
you
me?
just
Can you
fine.
hear
Can
me?
you hear me?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
it's
can.
maybe a little delayed. One of the things I tell people about people from the NRA and Second Amendment Society, it is. I have never heard of an NRA or a member of the Second Amendment Society committing heinous crimes, going out and committing mass shootings. There's always some. in the inner city, Philadelphia, and Chicago, and Detroit, and Trenton, Camden, they're not NRA members. And it seems like every time something happens, especially mass shootings, they tend to blame the NRA but you don't see people from the NRA or Second Amendment societies committing these heinous crimes.
It's usually very rare that you have someone, a part of the established gun community, that's actually committing these crimes. Some of the things that, that makes the evening news, and that the anti-gunners will say, well, see, this evil person who probably by statute shouldn't have even had a gun to begin with, and it was illegal in most cases for that person to have a gun. But you know what? They draw no distinction between bad people and good people. The only thing that's really in common is the fact that they own a firearm, and by extension, that firearm supposedly says more about their character than their actual background. So I go to conferences, like I went to the Gun Rights Policy Conference, which was probably my first ever gun convention that I went to, and I've gone to the NRA annual meeting, several years since that. I've run into zero. And I've always been known, but when you go to these conferences, you have
Boy, something, hey, this is Ector. Hey, brother Rick Ector, come on. You can come on. This equipment, and we're trying to shows groups. Talk shows. We talk about Marxism. We talk about some issues of progressive. About the policies. Can nothing. So this is the On Fire Show with the host Daryl M Show. I think